The stuttering dystopian nightmare of La Jetée, the imagistic fantasies of Un Chien Andalou, the mechanical menagerie of Man Ray's Ballet Mécanique, black and white, the early days. In the long flickering history of film, the short, however we define it, as something less than a feature and more than a photograph, has always been there, at the bleeding edge of cinematic experimentation. A razor blade slitting an eye, a woman collapsing into her mirrored double. The short has an almost magnetic hold over the gyrations and dreams of cinema, a place for play, somewhere to try things out, film's changing room. How many items, please? Speaking of the power of Chekhov's short stories, the American writer Raymond Carver spoke favourably of the way in which well-crafted capsule narratives have this, incredible ability to, and I quote, stage a revelation and in the same moment open a field of greater mystery. Revelation and mystery, very good. We could easily say the same thing of the short film, a thing which creates an entire faceted world before collapsing it again very quickly. Unlike the feature film, 90 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours, it doesn't need a warm-up. It doesn't have the space to really explain itself. Curious little things. And so, in honour of the short, we decided to do something a little bit different this week. This is still MUBTube, the podcast for dropouts, himbos and show-offs, but this time we're doing an omnibus, and we're taking a glance at 6 or 7 short films that are currently available on MUBI, all selected by the great, I should say curated actually, shouldn't I? All curated by the great, programmed by the great, immeasurable Ralph Pritchard, who's sitting several miles away from my currently undisclosed location. So Ralph, who wears short shorts?
We wear short shorts this week only, because I think generally we are quite skeptical about short films. I said we in a sort of Genesis PRH way. I am. I find
the unroyal we.
Yeah. I find short films. Of course, when you start making films, short films are the only films you can make. Because feature films are costly and
spenny,
require a huge level of commitment. Can be done, but yeah, it's short film is also a way to test ground, a proof of concept. But often a proof of concept is kind of misleading because the structure of a short film is so radically different from a feature film that it's like the whole form and content relationship becomes disrupted. So I don't think any of these short films that you described in your intro when you alluded to many very great legendary short films, and indeed these short films we watched here would take on a completely different form. I don't think they prove good feature film direction. They prove good short film direction.
No, they don't. I think it's a different
Whether
energy.
They prove good direction at all.
That's true. Because the short is in some weird ways, historically, like I said, very dominant. It's very highly influential. If we recall, cinema has its roots, again, because of cost and commitment in the short film. The very first films, by definition, were short films, length, and the feature is something we've slowly developed, whereas the short was kind of, if you think about the Lumiere brothers, men demolishing a wall, a snowball fight, these things are like less than a minute long. And over time, even as budgets increased, the short film kind of had this pull, right? And even longer films that were experimental kind of played with the ideas of short films, like Stan Brakhage, for example, in a way treated as short films because you might just watch a little bit of it. For example, you can do a little bit of Brakhage, and he also did short films, but he did longer concepts as well. Yeah. And so historically you've got this thing where the short film is very dominant and really super influential, right? Maya Deren, Chris Marker, La Jetée, whatever. Even though it's kind of like it exists in like this parallel universe to feature films, like feature films are one thing and shorts have their own award categories, and it's what students do and graduates maybe, and the aim is that like eventually you can graduate to make feature films. So they occupy this weirdly influential space, but also this transitory space where it's like, well, you're not going to make your name by making short films, kind of thing.
Yeah, very few people have like favorite short films, and I think very few people make short films in the hope that they will be like legendary short films. They just hope that will be a proof of concept and proof of talent. It's a whole different format, and you learn a lot more making like a feature length project, just because you learn about, when you rewatch what you've done, when you take that step back, it's literally like over an hour of your life to to collect it all in your brain. Which short film should we start with? Because we reviewed about 5.
Fuck it, let's talk about the good one while we've got energy. Let's talk about, which I think we can both agree is The Wind by Marcell Iványi. Yeah, okay, good. I'm glad we're on the same page. It's one of the favourite films we've seen on this podcast, personally.
Yeah.
This is a 6-minute film, 6.5-minute film from 1996, although it could, if you didn't know the year, you could easily mistake it for 1936 or 1956, whatever. It's a single take, that kind of holy grail, because people love to talk about formally, a single take as being this kind of Herculean thing, but here it's doing it in 6 minutes, so it shouldn't necessarily be that hard. But this one take does an incredible panoramic 360 sweep, going from a scene with 3 old women, and it does a big 360 panorama through this Hungarian landscape, very silvery, very grey, very flat and curious. And then it reveals a scene, which is what these women are looking at before the camera kind of settles back on these 3 women. So tell me about that scene. Tell me how you felt about that. Tell me what kind of feelings you had while you were like taking in this big swoop.
I was very moved by it. I guess another element to add is that the soundtrack is almost entirely, just as the title suggests, wind. A kind of silent blow of wind. Yeah. And then towards the very end of the shot, you can hear someone quite faintly singing a sort of folk song.
Yeah, you can.
I found it very beautiful. Tarkovsky wrote a book called Sculpting in Time, where he makes great emphasis on the cinematic process being one of sculpting in time, and that the unfolding of time within a frame being the essential aspect of cinema. And I think this film perfectly takes up that challenge. I can't.
Yeah, because it contains a lot of drama. This is a very highly dramatic film with very limited means.
Yeah, no dialogue as well. Everything is shown, nothing is told, which is kind of perfect.
This is what I loved about it. There is it like that Raymond Carver quote. It kind of opens up this drama, this dramatic kind of micro world, and leaves these mysteries. It resolves some of them and leaves other mysteries, because what the camera reveals on its swoop is a group of men who are standing looking kind of stage right, I guess you'd say, and it reveals hooded men who have been hung on these poles in this kind of weird like mini hanging ceremony. And it kind of goes past, and you see one body on a pole, and you see another, and then you realise there's a man who's about to be hung. And it is the dynamic action of the film. This guy's a hood is put over his head, a priest is facing him, presumably giving him his last rites, and then the guy kicks the stool out from under his feet, and he struggles for a bit, and then the camera moves on. And that's the drama, because it suddenly folds up, this is what the women are looking at. But leaves so many questions, like the shepherds who walk past, who seem uninterested in the scene. They're just kind of going about their work. And there's so many questions about. I mean, what did you unpick about the relationship? I don't think you're supposed to resolve this film at all.
Yeah, there's a beautiful unresolved thing. Of course, the substance of it is essentially you see them looking in a mixture of like they're sort of.
Very poised.
Yeah, they're
almost,
poised.
Almost statue.
I mean, of course, it's based on a photograph, which you then see at the end. Very well cast. The women, they look quite similar to their
really well cast.
But it's very, it's an amazing act of imagination, and it plays with that thing that cinema, because it's a 360, it plays with the frame. It plays with the fact that it's not like a VR experience where you have access to the full 360 and you just have to turn around.
Press A to hang.
This film shows you what's going on in all in due course.
Yes, yeah.
And I think that's a very, very important aspect of it. The horror of looking upon violence, and that horror is kind of, it's really less is more. It's very Bresson in that the less you see of their expression, the more you absorb as the audience what it must be to look upon that in their position. The other reference,
because
reference point while I'm referencing things is
Riff the Reps.
Miklos Jancsó, the Hungarian director, also Hungarian. I mean, I think it's something in the water, because he does very. Also, Bellatar does similar slow shots.
Bellatar, obviously, I was about to say.
But I think that Jancsó's more relevant because there's the relationship to violence, the way that a camera can sort of swoop past violence somewhat indifferently, but that indifference gives deeper space for the audience to feel the
alienation of that distance between what's happening and your perspective, because you absorb all of it, but the one thing you don't absorb is the context and the immediate emotion of it, and it's got the same energy to it almost. I think it's a more beautiful scene, this other one I'm going to say, but it's the beginning of Requiem to Harmonies, the dancing planet scene in the beginning of Requiem to Harmonies, by Bellatar. In the bar, where the kind of guy, the teacher who's in the bar, kind of takes all the old drunks and gets them to move in the direction of the planets. And it's a very beautiful, touching scene, and you don't really have any context or understanding why it's happening, but you're very moved by it. And here it's very similar, because you're like, well, are these the men who are being hung? Remember, this is Eastern Europe. Have they gone against the state? Are they rogues and rebels? Are they political enemies? Have they wronged this community in particular somehow? The women looking at them, are they mothers, wives? And there's is this their revenge? Are they looking on stony and cold-hearted because they're getting revenge on these men who have wronged the community, or are they so immured in violence that they almost let it happen, because people who have experienced massive traumas and upheavals might have become very accustomed to pushing down their sadness. I think it's a really good, like, talking about Bresson, talking about focusing on like little details, that when the three women walk away back to the house, the third woman kind of stumbles slightly, very gently, almost unnoticed actually. She kind of loses her balance a bit.
Keeping it real. I think it's really interesting,
because the real stumble, and it's like, well, it might have been unscripted because her leg had gone a bit dead standing there, but it kind of intimates that might be a kind of expression of her trauma, that she's seen this, so she's kind of lost her balance. And I thought that was a really touching little thing that might even have been unplanned. So yeah, this was a good film. This is a really moving, powerful film that shows you what you can do with like one shot. And really limited staging, less is more.
Have you ever seen anyone die?
Have I ever seen anyone die? I've seen the aftermath of that, but not seen someone die. No, I haven't.
I haven't either. But it suddenly struck me when I was watching that, like the enormity of that witnessing process.
Yeah, it's amazing how they kind of. It's almost like they're kind of clockwork figures in a way that are kind of going through these motions, and that's to like not to downplay how emotional this film is. This was a really good film, and it was really short. Every other film we watched is longer than this one.
Yes.
But do you want to introduce the second one? I don't care which one. Just
okay. The second film that we watched is by Mati Diop, who is a actor and director. Of Senegalese heritage. She is the niece of the legendary Senegalese director of Tuki Buki and others, Djibril Diop Mambéty. But she's been directing quite a few films recently, including a feature-length film called Atlantiques.
Atlantique.
Which I believe was based on a short film she made for MUBI, maybe, or that was on MUBI.
I believe so. Yeah, I've seen Atlantique. But yeah, I didn't realise the relationship until you just mentioned it now.
You've seen the long Atlantique or the short one?
The little film, whatever the little film was that preceded it, I've seen.
Right, yeah.
Which I did really enjoy. This film, however...
She's a great actor. She's in Simon Killer and 35 Rums,
right.
like Claire Denis.
Okay. Claire Denis. Okay, we love Claire Denis. So
she's very beautiful as well, Matty Diop. And
very beautiful.
The thumbnail image for this thing is like her legs beside a fridge, which kind of, which is a very classic bit, movie. If you're listening, come on. The thumbnail image gives us the impression of a sort of like a sexy vibe.
It definitely gives a sexy vibe, which the film doesn't really have.
She's in high heels and a pencil skirt, and she's lit up in blue. It's like Gaspar Noé energy, but with a more sort of like tinted Ackerman. Anyway,
it's more banal than that.
But anyway, the film is. I like the film. It was a good film.
I hated it. I fucking hated it. It's just absolutely pretentious shite. Like, I really disliked this film. It made me really like actively want to like doing my fucking TV. There's something about this because this was commissioned by Miu Miu, the fashion brand,
right?
And it shows the typical indirection that fashion brands have when they come to think, oh, we are cultural creators and we should marshal our forces and They commissioned 20 films by women directors, which is a noble thing, but the argument is why. And the obligation is that some of Miu Miu's clothes would appear in the film, which is why she's kind of got some Miu Miu heels on, and you see the dresses for a bit, and she kind of dances kind of sort of badly sexily, and it's kind of
to La Traviata, right?
Yeah, because La Traviata, her grandmother, whose voice appears in the film, was a lover of opera. I don't know if she was an opera singer or something. There's just no context. It's like, it was made in lockdown, to be fair, and it's just, I live in Paris, my grandmother is interesting, I'm not really that interesting, but I've got nice legs. Here I am dancing in front of a little mirror. Here, oh look, my life is so interesting. It's just like, I think when you turn the camera towards yourself and assume that can just automatically stand in for significance and depth, it's just kind of misleading. I don't know. I really dislike this. I found it torturously boring to watch and just chaotic and badly shot, and I expected more from someone who'd made a film that I kind of liked quite a lot. I'm sorry, I steamrolled that because I was just...
No, it's great to hear such passion.
I found the film so pretentious and just, come on, seriously. And it's just like... I don't know. It just went after seeing Wind, and I watched it right after Wind, and I was like,
oh, right, yeah.
I know you can't judge all filmmakers by other filmmakers, and everyone has their personal journey, but I was just like, you can do a lot with very little, and it's just felt like Matty Diop had kind of phoned it in.
This was the first film I watched in the shorts, and I had quite a generous appetite for it, and I just found it like charming, and some of the recorded exchanges between her and her mother sort of were quite evocative. And the the sort of stuff, the emails with the Miu people, I felt like she was she realised that the whole corporate element of the film's production was a bit irritating, and
she tried to ironicize it.
She wanted to sort of put that in there to kind of to avoid it being, because some of these things, like when MUBI did that Valentina film, it was like so cringily obviously like a corporate thing. So I know she's obviously aware of that and trying to kind of negate it,
create some satirical distance,
but not even satirical, just like, I don't know, a bit of self-reflexivity. We all basically experienced lockdown as an adjustment to our lives, and I think probably in the moment of being in that state, especially in Paris where lockdown was quite strict, I can sympathize with the urge to make something of this nature.
Yeah, I can sympathise with the lack of materials and the kind of insularity of lockdown and the way it kind of forces a kind of reflexivity which she's got here. But I don't think that's how she was experiencing lockdown. It felt like a very self-aware posturing. I just sit on my kitchen floor with my legs out. No, you don't know, do you? Like it felt inauthentic because she was trying to be authentic in a very kind of inauthentic way, and I just didn't like it. I don't know. It just struck me, and I really disliked the kind of final scene when she's like filming a fucking seagull out the window badly without any stabilizer on her camera. And it's just like, oh, I get it now. Yeah, like the bird is free, but you're not. Cool. Thanks for that on the note, subtle metaphor, Matty Diop. Done.
I don't feel the need to defend this film much.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I feel really bad. It's really interesting though that we've had such a different reaction to it, and maybe if I was in a different headspace, I would have.
That's another thing with short films I wanted to say, actually, that with a short film you tend to be more affected by the context in which you see it, because there's less time to really be immersed in that world. So I think, you could, with a bit more...
You can squeeze it in, because I did it like, I'm cooking dinner and I'm waiting for some like onions and shit to cook. Okay, so next we've got Jóhannsson's The End of Summer.
From 2014, which is 29 minutes. The wind was 7 minutes, and...
In My Room was 20.
This is 29.
This is 29, yeah. So we're kind of creeping up the scales a little bit. Tell me about... Jóhannsson's film.
It was a bunch of Super 8 footage of Antarctica. Jóhannsson, currently deceased, I believe.
Currently
there are plans to bring him back. I think he killed himself, so probably it's not very good to talk in this terms.
I didn't realise that. I wish you hadn't told me that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Carry on.
I don't think they know. It's toxicology reports indicate the lethal combination of cocaine and flu medication. Speedballs.
The classic...
Fassbinder died that way, right?
Fassbinder, yeah.
Anyway, he was a composer from Iceland, and he did a lot of... He was really loved for his music. He did the music to...
Sicario.
Yeah.
Famously.
A bunch of other things.
Bunch of stuff. He's a very excellent composer. Was a very excellent composer.
Yeah, I've enjoyed his... Did he do Chernobyl, or was that someone else?
No, that was someone else.
Okay.
But
anyway, this film is a bunch of penguins. It's in Super 8.
Yeah.
You can really tell he's not a filmmaker. I found it super fucking boring. I sat on my phone for some of it.
I did as well.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's just there because of the name brand recognition. There's no way in hell this would be up here on MUBI without it being by a good composer.
It's a MUBI exclusive. I think it's more because he's a composer. The music came first. I get the impression this is more like we should more consider this. We're more generous to it if we consider it a music video. A very elaborate music video in some senses because of the cost involved, not only in flying to Antarctica but shooting over a course of 20 days on Super 8 footage, which is a very expensive way to go making a music video.
I suppose so. Super 8's quite cheap though, isn't it? I suppose he probably shot quite a lot.
Yeah, but I mean more like the cost of flying to Antarctica and staying there for 20 days.
That's true.
You're talking like tens of thousands of pounds just on logistics alone, you know.
Well, good, we've got a producer's brain on here.
We have to step back. Emotionally, how we felt like there's some scenes which I think the scenes towards the end where it stops focusing on penguins and it focuses on the icebergs are very arresting images. Because the icebergs naturally are white and there's a lot of blowout on the film, so they're kind of like these haunting big lumbering shapes in the kind of middle distance, which I found kind of quite beautiful. But I was really clock watching on this.
I think the thing is that there was no tension between any of the elements, so there
was no logic to the order of what we were seeing.
And I would propose that this is indicative of a film directed by a composer, because when you are a composer you are in charge of producing one element of a countervailing conflict.
Yes.
Or force. Yep. So like if you're a director, you have to manage different forces moving against each other. So you might have some music that's quite sentimental, but then you might have some action that's quite unsentimental, and you're constantly like managing this contrast, chiaroscuro. And when you're the musician, all you have to think about is like the music being on one level. That's why like classical music and soundtrack music are so different, because like soundtrack music has one emotion, whereas classical music is like has built up its own kind of internal world.
I mean, classical music is more elaborate and has counterpoints and has kind of like threads. So I wouldn't say it's completely one tone, but I know what you mean.
I found this film to be one tone.
Yeah, no, it kind of was. The music I felt was a bit more involved because he was sort of an experimental composer, and it has the music. And when you're doing music, you might not necessarily mind when you're doing that music to kind of how you order sequences, especially if you're going for a more experimental kind of dynamic to the music. So it's got the same kind of logic, like, we're going to have some penguins here, and then we're going to have a bit of sea ice, and then we're going to have like some grass. It's like, okay, and like there was no like central. Maybe there was a way to arrange this footage in a way that like focused in on one of the penguins or tried to pull some narrative or tension out of it. But it was just like, I guess anyone who went with a Super 8 camera to, would have probably shot the same stuff. And
it's pretty easy to make beautiful
way.
images when you're working with celluloid.
Yeah.
Just piece of piss,
really.
It
was fine. It was just, the music is more, the music's
kind of
very interesting and nice. It's got like weird little voices in it.
I don't really remember the music actually. The music really.
I listened to it separately on its own.
That's good.
It's quite nice.
So it washed over me a bit. Was it sort of a bit like The Caretaker, kind of haunty?
Yeah, a little bit haunty, and like I said, this is like little voices in it, and it's kind of a bit haunting, and yeah.
All right, should we move on?
Yeah, let's move on. That was fine. Whatever. Fine.
Yeah, I think you like that more than I did, that one.
But I didn't. I like the music. The film itself, I was just like, I don't see the point. But there's some nice footage in there that would make a good. Like, I was thinking, like, if you took some mushrooms and had it on a big projector in a dark room, and just decided to have like a really fucking weird trip for half an hour, that would be good.
Yeah, but that's a lot of caveats, isn't it?
It's a lot of caveats, yeah. And you could say about any film, to be honest.
Strasbourg, 1518, directed by Jonathan Glazer, director of Under the Skin, the one with Scarlett Johansson, where she bangs a bunch of Scottish dudes and then kills them. And
also scored by Michael Levy as well.
Yeah, scored by Michael Levy, who did the music, entered the mainstream as an avant-garde composer very effectively. And she returns in this. Glazer's had quite an interesting career. He did Sexy Beast and a few other films. Yeah. This is not really like any of those films. I suppose it has some of the kind of drabness of Under the Skin. It's 10 minutes long. It's shots of various dancers in various mostly empty white-walled rooms. In daytime and nighttime, cuts to a certain rhythm. It gets faster and faster. It takes its inspiration from an unexplained mania that swept the city of Strasbourg in July 1518. I don't know about that, to be fair.
It sounds familiar to like I think that happened a couple of times in European history. There was like a dance macabre, and there was this kind of like these dancing sicknesses that broke out that might have been linked to like lead poisoning. Beautiful. It was more like people having fits in the street, I think.
So obviously a bit of
chroniclers,
a bit of pandemic inspiration from Mr. Glazer.
Yeah.
What do you reckon, Owen? Did this get you dancing?
No, it's shit. No. I've seen a lot of in one of my past lives. Used to program a lot of short film, and a lot of it was dance film predominantly. And so I've seen probably, like hundreds of dance films, like many, and this really didn't stand out for me in any way. Like, it's just some people dancing in and considering when you look at the credits, the production team on this, it was like 50 people. And it was kind of linked to Sadler's Wells and BBC pumped some money into it, which might explain, but I was just like, the components should be interesting.
BBC,
like Michael Levy.
Man. Fucking boring cunts.
Boring fucking.
Like, you could be funding all kinds of mad shit. I mean, I don't expect them to because they're normies, but like this was so come on, BBC, like
Sadler's Wells as well.
You're just funding it because of the names involved, and
because like Michael Levy, but it didn't even stand out as a piece of Michael Levy music. It was like I was like, really? No, it's just like this kind of like slightly hardcore tempoed bit of techno that was like boom 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 boom, and it's like she's just phoned it in. The dancing was kind of interesting, but again there was no tension between the pieces. It was trying to show this like building up of this dancing tension, but there's so many really good dancers in films who have been shot really well, like Ryan Heffington and whatever. There's a lot of really excellent dance films you can see which kind of maintain a interesting tension. It's like it was kind of slightly sickly lighting, but in there it's just like, I guess the people can dance.
I think we both equally didn't like that film.
I just didn't get it. It's like, okay, fine.
I don't think there was anything to get, dude. I think it just was. It was what it was, and it wasn't very much.
Was what it was. Okay, so
that leaves one film
remaining, which is 7 Years in May. Yeah, I think
7 Years in May by Affonso Uchoa.
Yeah, who's quite a a controversial, transgressive Brazilian director who's made some quite well-received films, often with a kind of political slant to them. This is a very political film. I didn't finish it. Hands up. I kind of sizzled out on me. Very bad behaviour. It's 42 minutes long.
You're gonna have.
The dog ate it.
You're gonna have to have your hands beaten.
It's getting a bit S&M now. I love it. I'm going to be digitally spanked by 6 of the best from
You'll be in a room with some Nazi prostitutes. I'll see you later.
Yeah. I think it's I don't know. It's a film. 42 minutes long, so it's kind of pushing the.
Shall I just talk about the film because I've actually seen it?
Can you talk about the film because you've seen the whole thing? I can. I have some visceral reactions to it, and there's bits I liked and bits I didn't.
Yeah,
like.
all right.
So
I'll do the synopsis. So basically, there's sort of 3 parts to this film. The first part is where the main character is wandering down a road for quite a long time, and then we see him being brutalized and beaten up and taunted by cops, and then we cut to him round a fireside recounting the story. Basically he was mistaken for a drug dealer by police, and they were threatening him, saying, you know, if you don't tell us where the drugs are, we're gonna beat you up. And he didn't have anything he could tell them. And then there was a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, as far as I can see, whereby this incident of violence from the police kind of led him down a dark road of addiction and homelessness. And he recounts this story to a stranger, and the stranger, they talk a little bit. So the long section of him just telling the story, continuing the story from what we've seen on screen, telling it just one shot, him talking, and then we cut to the reverse shot of the person he's talking to, and they have a bit of an exchange about the police, and it's quite so it reminded me of this book I was reading a few months ago about Raoul Moat, this thing about, you know, like people who are really against the police so much so they want to like declare war on the police, and he's like, you know, I can never forget what they did, and the guy's like, yeah, something similar happened to me, but you know,
and at the end of the film, Paul Gascoigne turns up with a fishing rod and a rotisserie chicken. And I didn't see that bit. I'm just guessing. Don't spoil my
my flourish. We're getting there. We're getting to the rotisserie and the fishing rod. But yeah, Raoul Moat had no idea, by the way, that Glazer was there.
Oh, that's strange.
Yeah, didn't figure in his reality. I think he was. Yeah. Anyway, so that happens, and then the guy was like, the guy he's talking to basically says, like, you know, the police, no one, if you go against the police, no one will back you, like everyone will just watch you be cuffed and taken away, and like, you know, when you take out one cop, like 1,000 more come after you. So there's a kind of conflict there between like the instinct towards revenge and the sort of acceptance of suffering, which I quite liked. Giving my opinion during the synopsis, controversial. Then in Act 3, there's just a game played with a group of people, including the man we've just seen, where it's a little bit like Duck Duck Goose. I don't know if people played that when they were younger, but everyone sort of stands up or sits down, and the man cries out, "Dead, alive, alive, dead." Just randomly says alive and dead, and if he says dead, you have to crouch down, and if he says alive, you have to be stood up. But because it's in an irregular sequence, quite often people stand up just because they hear a word, and actually the word is just dead. You have to stay down, and so anyone who gets caught out standing up at the wrong time is expelled from the game, and he's left there at the end. I quite liked actually, I quite liked that. I just thought about this recently. I was talking to my friend about trauma, and the sort of reptilian brain always only ever really hears the tone in which things are said rather than like what's being said, which I thought was quite a pertinent thought in relationship to this game of Dead or Alive, where you sort of respond. But curiously, paradoxically, even though this guy is seen to have been traumatized quite deeply, he plays the game the best, and it's only right at the end when we sort of focus on him, and then the person says dead repeatedly and he doesn't stand down, sort of a moment of defiance. But then the camera it cuts to a wider shot and there's no one else there, so either he imagined it or he's won the game. Quite a neat juxtaposition. I found the film quite boring, but in like but like now talking about it, I can kind of I feel like it deserves credit for the thematic links. I found it quite serious, like
very serious.
Yeah. What did you think of the first 20 minutes of it, Owen?
First 20... Fuck you. I mean, I saw... So the first and second parts of this film, basically. And I think it was... What I got from the scene of the beating was actually him, in another kind of game, was actually his friends reenacting the beating. Because he's amongst them and they've got this box of police equipment and they kind of don the clothes of a police officer and they quickly transitions and it's a play acting thing.
Is that what part one is? I thought part one was the actual thing. It's
not showing the beating because they're not cops, remember. They're like, yeah, it's fine. I didn't watch the whole film. Apparently you weren't paying attention. But they go through this box of... Which is worse. They go through this box of police clothes and they're like trying them on. They're like, hey, you look like a cop and so on. So they're away. He's like, oh, I'm Special Operations Division.
Okay, I like it more now. I remember that bit about Special Operations thing. I think I just zoned out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because it is quite a long kind of it's very dark, that scene, and it's lots of kind of like almost ad-lib style conversations that are overlapping each other and you can't really focus on what's happening, and I think it does that intentionally. It's a very murky film. His story is quite affecting. I suppose I was kind of eating some Cool Bears and watching that and was just like, this is an interesting story. It's an interesting story about how police violence brutalizes people and creates the conditions that it's set out to repel, which shows you that the policing isn't often in a lot of these countries really about justice. It's about enacting state violence, irregardless of the consequences, which is driving him actually to a life of crime and misery, because he actually then becomes my Siri just picked up on the word misery there. Interesting.
Misery.
Misery. Are you feeling misery? So it's I think the film that this was shown, it was shown at a film festival, which is a kind of transmedia thing where it's a documentary film festival that encourages kind of experimental documentaries. So that's why there's a kind of performative
it's a documentary.
Kind of. It's kind of a performative documentary. It's not as bold in that sense. So this I'm led to believe that this is actually the Raphael guy who's experienced this.
So that makes this a bit woke then, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit woke, I guess. And it's I mean, I didn't see this end part, which sounds kind of interesting.
Yeah, the end part was good.
As a documentary, it's weird because there's a long history of re-performing acts of trauma, like Joshua Oppenheimer, the act of killing, which does this very well.
Oh yeah, I mean, even comparing this to that just feels like you're bringing a prize trout into a room full of
horrible little fish. Scampi, yeah.
I quite like Scampi.
Of Scampi crisps. I actually really love Scampi.
Shout out to Scampi.
But there's an element of Joshua Oppenheimer here. But the radical thing about Joshua Oppenheimer is he's not getting victims to reenact acts of trauma. He's getting the perpetrators to reenact them, which is why it's so interesting. He's getting like the executioner to reenact Western style police interrogations.
History told by its victors, but in an interesting way. We could talk about acts of killing for hours.
Acts of killing, we really could. But anyway, it's fine. This film, I guess you're right. It's kind of woke. It's kind of like political. Policing is political and it's violent, which I know. I don't know what ends it serves the film really. I was like,
or you think it's like sort of Ken Loach kind of people must know energy.
It did have that, didn't it? Yeah. This declarative, like this is a story.
It was so self-serious. There was no like absurdity or humor.
It was missing the absurd, even though everything about it was absurd. Like the play acting at the beginning, the fact that he's walking down the road and there's the occasional car that kind of goes right past him, just zoom past him, but that could be played up for absurdity. And I think, I don't know.
We want a very particular thing from films, though, don't we? And I feel like Wind gave us that.
Yeah, I think that tells you everything about our inclination of our biases and our rating system is when we're like, 6 minute silent panning film with like some statuesque hangings and no music. We're like, fuck yes. I'm sure other people would have really. This is very like film festival fare.
Yeah.
This last one. So it definitely taps into a particular aesthetic of and politics of film festivals. You can go to Berlinale or whatever and see this and be like, okay, yeah.
You can't go anywhere now. It's just sad what's happening to film festivals at the moment. All this,
you could zoom into
people watching scheduled streams and buying passes and stuff online. It's just fucking depressing.
Not that we get invited to film festivals. Bad screen, good screen. Now all screens are bad screen, I think, is what we realise.
Yeah.
All screen. It's a forever bad screen that stretches to the horizon.
I've got to go soon, man.
Have you? Okay, well, that's the perfect place to wrap it up, really.
Woof woof.
Woof woof. So I think we were barking up the wrong tree with these films. Maybe there was stuff to like, there was stuff to dislike. I think Wind was the apogee for me of short film excellence.
Should we give it an award? The MUBI Awards, short of the year.
The MUBI,
even though it came out in the
Palm.
90s.
What's like the Palm? What other kind of palms can you have? There's the Palm d'Or. The Palm d'Or. Palm. It
was our favourite boring film.
Yeah, it was our favourite boring film. So we award it. I mean, Marcell Iványi, he's not really made any other films since.
Yeah, fuck him, man. Why hasn't he made any other films? He's clearly really good.
I hate that kind of like self-satisfied. I said what I need to say.
Come on, man.
Blech. He made a film called Badello, which is similar to this film. It reenacts a painting in this context in Belgium, I think, or something. But hard to find, actually. But Caragaga will probably yield up.
My ratio on Caragaga is that's the one thing lockdown has helped with. My Caragaga ratio is now, I'm out. I'm out of the red.
Oh yeah, the red. I got kicked from Caragaga for ratioing myself.
It's made it a lot. They've made it a lot easier now to stay. But
this was like 10 years ago.
All invites. So I can't bring you back. You're gone.
I don't want to be back in the fold. I want to. Yeah, that's why I've got MUBI. That's all I need now.
It's true, actually. A lot of things have made their way from Caragaga to MUBI. A lot of things that were only available on Caragaga are now available.
The shit shoot. Anyway, thanks for listening. I don't know if we'll do this kind of format again, but we might when there's sufficient crop of films. That's good, yeah. Keep it light and easy. We are coming up very close to our 25th anniversary, by which I mean our 25th episode.
We've been doing it for 25 years. I mean, I am 25 years old. So soon after my womb release, I began podcasting.
The early episodes are highly radical in the podcast realm. But so we're going to announce a kind of special episode of it, which is going to be 25 with special guests and a slightly unique format. But until then, stay tuned. Stay indoors.
Stay happy. Stay real.
Stay real. Bye.
Bye.